Hello, this is Angela Anderson. Thanks for joining me today. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to paint this silhouette of a tree. I love this image. It was sent to me by Sally Roldan Miller, and she's one of my Patreon members. And this photo was taken by Susan Ward Trustrail, one of her friends, and she gave me permission to use it in my video. So thank you to Susan and Sally for allowing me to have this beautiful image to use in the video for us. We've got a very simple palette. I'm using white, yellow oxide, burnt sienna, black, and a little bit of glazing medium. And that'll be it. We'll just mix our colors, make some grays and brown yellows. It's kind of an orangey brown, so I wanted to use the burnt sienna because I thought that would make a nice orange color. So I'm just mixing my yellow oxide with a little bit of the burnt sienna to make it a little bit more orange. Then I'll add a little bit of white. That'll be our main background color. I'm going to grab a little bit of my glazing medium there. Just extends the drying time a little bit, makes it a little bit easier to work these colors. I'm using my Strathmore mixed media journal, so you can use a canvas if you'd like. I'm just using this because I like to practice on it, and it's the right size. It's almost the same exact size as our image, so I thought it would be a good one to use. I'm just going to start up in this upper corner and work my way down. This video is sponsored by Audible. And at the end of the video, I'll be sharing a link with you and some information about how you can join if you'd like to. I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow as I come down here. I'll be lightening up my colors, so using a little bit more white and just dipping into my glazing medium to make sure that I'm blending it out. Maybe use a little bit of that darker color up here. I'm just going to pull across to get it kind of smooth. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth, but it's a pretty even gradation of color, so I'm going to do my best to get it blended down like that. Working wet into wet. So my paper's dry, but the paints are going to be wet as we work our colors together. So one wet color into the next. Adding a little bit more yellow as I come down here. If your paints are starting to get sticky, you can just let it dry completely and come back to it. It does not have to be done all in one setting. If you're having trouble getting your blending to look right, you can always cover back over. Acrylics are nice that way, so don't worry about it too much. But if it's starting to get sticky, it'll start to lift off of your canvas or whatever. If you're probably not your paper, actually, so paper is probably a good one to do it with, but the paper seems to sometimes give people trouble because it dries a little bit faster than canvas, so just keep that in mind. All right, as I get down towards here, this is mostly yellow and behind the trees here, and then this bottom area looks like our horizon line is right about here, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that light yellow horizon line in, and then we'll cover most of that up with our gray trees. That's about all I need to do for the sky. Let me grab a little bit of the black. A little bit will go a long way, and we'll mix that in with the yellow and some white to make a gray for our foreground. Maybe just a little bit more black. Whoops, got you off camera there, sorry. So there's black, yellow oxide, and some white. It's mostly yellow oxide and white. There's just a little bit of the black. It makes a nice, kind of almost an olive toned gray. Kind of matches our photograph. If you're concerned about your horizon line being perfectly straight, I'm using the edge of my brush and just kind of going across, but you could tape it off once this background is dry and use your taped edge to get a perfectly straight line. So that's an option if you want to do that. I'm just going to put a few streaks in there. I think actually I even want to go down a little bit farther with that. So I might grab some of my white and just bring that down into the water a little bit. There we go. You notice with water, I tend to like to do these horizontal lines. That's how you'll see the ripples in the water visually. Anything that on water in the distance will have these kind of horizontal lines. So that just kind of helps with that effect. All right, there we go. It's kind of blending on me, so I may have to let it dry completely before I get that lighter color again. Let me grab a little bit of black. And I'm going to put in my shoreline. I'm just going to tap with the black. It's mixed with this gray color, so it still has some of that yellow oxide in it and white. I'm just going to put a nice dark line right across there, but I don't want it too dark, so I might lighten that up just a little bit because we want the black of our trees to be the darkest value. I'm just going to grab a little bit of white and just tap back over. That'll give it some illusion of depth too, doing that. Okay, looks good. Now I'm just going to start kind of flicking up. And let some of that light color show through a little bit, but I'm going to cover most of it up. Whoop, got a little bit over my horizon line there. That's okay. There we go. So the tree line kind of stops right about there, and then we start seeing individual branches. So I'm just going to do this whole area kind of dark. We'll do sort of a layer here and then another layer up here. Grab a little white, add that in. I think I'm going to use my fan brush here just to give it a little texture. Grab some of that darker and just kind of pull up through and do a couple of lines. It looks like there's kind of a dark area through here. Maybe pull down, actually. And then pull up. This is very subtle, so you don't really want it to be super detailed. So I'm kind of keeping it soft, just tapping lightly here and blending those colors together. And I think I want to grab some of that darker. Make another dark horizon line because I lost that with that kind of dark gray color. Tap with the fan brush this time. I think we'll have a little bit more control. I'm using a stiff bristled fan brush. I find those to be a little bit easier to control when I'm using. There, okay, that looks good. Let me We'll grab some of that yellow too. There we go. Put a little bit of these colors back in, then kind of vary the line of those trees there so that it's not such a straight line. There we go. Grab that gray and just soften that edge by tapping back over it a little bit. Okay. So far so good. We grab a liner brush now. We'll put in some trees with the liner brush. I'm going to add a bit of water, grab my glazing medium, that'll help thin down my paint too. And I'm going to pull it to a point and just start lining some trees. Pull all the way up to about, oh, if this is halfway, almost to the third. If you split this in thirds all the way across, your tree is going to come all the way up to about there. Don't worry too much about any individual tree trunk. We're just going to kind of flick them from the bottom and from this section in here. We'll blend them in a little bit better later. I just want to fill up this area with a bunch of tree branches. Some of them are going to come off the main tree trunks, but they're all pretty small and close together. So they overlap quite a bit. So it's kind of hard to see where one ends and the other begins. But I'm all starting them all down in this dark gray area just to make it easier for me to hide the trunks a little bit. Just keep reloading your light. This takes some patience, so just take your time with it. It's good practice for using the liner brush. Make sure your lines don't get too thick. And you can kind of avoid any problems with that if you keep your paint nice and thin and use a nice thin liner brush. Always twist it to a point as you load it and pull from the thickest part of the trunk out to the tip. So the tip, wherever you end your brush stroke, is going to be the thinnest part of the tree limb. So you don't want to start your limbs and pull down this way, because then you'll have a nice thick line at the end of your tree branch. You want your branches to be thinnest at the tips. I'll speed it up here in a minute. I'm just going to continue to add branches, and once you get your main tree trunks in, then you can start adding some little side branches, offshoot in different directions. Be sure to vary the height of all of your trees, make some nice and tall and some shorter, and even out those tree trunks so that they're thicker toward the base and thinner at the top where they're reaching for the sun. We'll zoom in here and give you a better shot here so you can see a little bit closer detail what I'm doing with these trees now. Now that I've got the main branches in, I'm just going to start adding a few little details, lengthening a few of them so that they stand out a little bit more, thickening a few of the tree trunks. Most of them are going to be covered with some foliage, so I'm not too worried about getting all of the little major details in every single tree, but I do want a few of the trees to stand out a little bit more and have a little bit darker trunks. So I'm adding a little bit of detail to a few of these. Okay, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to clean that out and grab my fan brush again. I'm just going to soften up the area there where the trees meet the foreground there. So I'm just going to tap in a little bit of foliage or something there, just to kind of soften that up. Maybe flick some grass like. Some of those. I don't want to cover up all of that tree trunk though, so don't do too much. We'll let that dry. It'll dry a little bit darker than it looks right now, so we'll see what it looks like. But I want to grab some of that gray that we used for the tree branches and just tap in with the edge of my fan brush some little bits of foliage. I'm kind of keeping it vertical so that I have a little bit more control over it. Just tap, tap, tap. Keeping those leaves kind of going in the vertical. As the branch goes out, I can kind of turn it a little bit, but just trying to keep it where I can control it a little bit better. And that softer gray color. That looks pretty good. Grab a little bit of that darker color and tap in a little bit of that along that line there again. Just feel like I want to soften that up a little bit. Just tap along that edge to break up any obvious start and stop points there. I think I'm going to use a little bit of this gray down in this water too and just kind of run it side to side. My edge got curled up there. Get a little bit of the lighter color on there. There we go. Keep it horizontal. Some of that light yellow. There we go. Tap that in along that horizon line, or shoreline, I should say. There we go. Maybe add a little bit of this color to our bushes. Trying to keep it kind of subtle though. Don't want to add too much. Grab a little bit of that darker again and tap back over. You could use your, if you've got like a Deerfoot stippler or a stippler type brush, you could use that instead if you want to. But we're just kind of trying to keep it soft, and you can see in the photograph that it's very kind of all blended together. All right, so I like this. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can kind of see where we're at. This guy's a little bit brighter than the photograph here, but it printed out a little bit duller than the original that I had, so I wanted to make it a little bit brighter tone. So I think what I'm going to do now is take my glazing medium and my large brush, make sure that this is dry, and it is, And right in here, there's this kind of halo effect, like maybe there's some sunlight or haze coming through the trees. So I'm going to do a light wash of some of this light yellow color. Actually, a little bit of white and a lot of glaze. A little bit of yellow. So it's mostly glazing medium. The nice thing about the glazing medium is you can use as much of it as you want to thin your color down. So we can really thin it down to a nice thin, transparent color. I'm just going to brush that over. It's kind of hard to tell how dark you have it until you start working with it. But okay, I'm just going to brush that over mainly this area right in here. I'll grab a little bit more of the brighter yellow there. There we go. And I'm just going to work it in. You could kind of work it in a circular motion if you want to, but it's just going to soften up that even more, cause it to blend back into the background. See how that's kind of neat? I might grab a little bit of the white and just do a little bit more white right in here. Just blend that out a little bit. Okay, I like that. Let's just added another little layer of mist. Let's put a little bit of it down in here. This might be a little bit wet, but I think it'll be okay. I'm just going to add a little bit of it right along those bushes right there. Just soften up that tree line slightly. Maybe go ahead and just put it over. There we go. Okay, I think I like that. Mainly concerned with my values, just making sure that this and this has the same light and darkness as my photograph, and I think it looks pretty good. I think I might want to. No, I think I'm happy. Let's go ahead and start with our tree limb. So I'm going to start out with my number 2 round, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and use the black for the tree. And then I might add a little bit of burnt sienna highlights over it, but I think the main tree is going to be black. And if you'd like to download this image, I'll have it on my Facebook page, and I'll also share it on my Instagram so that you can have it for a reference and you can trace it if you'd like to. And traceables are also available on my Patreon page. So we're not actually seeing the tree trunk really of this until we get up to about the midway point. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of that in there. And then it kind of breaks off and goes up like that. So if you're concerned about this at all, what you can do is just trace on your limbs and fill them in. Use the tracing paper and transfer your design onto your canvas or paper. I like to kind of freehand tree limbs. They're pretty, I don't know, I find it relaxing, so. The main thing you want to keep in mind is well, if you look at your photograph here, a lot of your junctions are going to have this Y shape. So all of the places where your tree is splitting off is going to all grow out and split in these Y formations. Let's put in our main branch that kind of comes across the whole thing. It's really right at the halfway point almost, just above it. My brush is not as wide as it needs to be, so I'll just have to go back, thicken that line up a little bit. And if you come to an abrupt end like this, let me zoom in here, you can see what I'm doing. You just want to transition that little section right there so that it looks like it is joined to your tree limb, and then you can also give it a little soften the top part too. There's usually kind of a little dip right here, and then like a little dip down wherever your main branches are, starting and stopping. And give it a little bit more realism since we're using a photograph today. Up off there. What I'm going to do is get my main branches in, and then I will, going off the edge there, sorry. And then I will go back in with my liner brush and do my smaller branches with the liner. But I'm just getting the main thicker branches in with this thicker brush. It'll just make it go a little faster. Go. Nice big limb right here that kind of curves out and down. And it's splitting off right here and going back up a little bit. Okay, so I want all the rest of my limb to be at least that thick. And then I want it to widen as it gets closer to the base of the tree here. There we go. I'm obviously doing a loose interpretation of this tree, not going exactly by the photograph, but we're getting as close as we can. Let me move this over so you can see a little bit more of the photo. So we're right here. This branch here is our next one. This kind of branches off down, kind of gets lost in this tangle here. I think that this one is that. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think it comes from down here and then goes back up. And then it continues up here and crosses over this one and goes up like that. Here again, once I get that limb in there, I'm going to just go in and make sure that it's all nice and even all the way down. Same width or tapered toward the tip. This limb goes, there's one that comes across, almost straight across right here. That. Right, then there's another one that comes down here. You're not seeing where it touches the thing. Let's go ahead and do this one right here in the middle, because it kind of starts, yeah, there's one that kind of comes up like this and does some sort of a wiggled thing. It curves up and back down. And I'm just going ahead and kind of wiggling a little bit as I do it, because these branches are kind of knobby. They're not super smooth. So they've got some interesting texture and things on them. So if I kind of just slightly wiggle my brush, it kind of gives it that effect. Okay, we'll just speed this up again a little bit. We are doing a lot of the same. As you can see, I'm just adding more and more branches, mainly our large branches, just to kind of fill in our empty spaces with this large brush. You can see here where my line got a little thin in the middle, so I'm going to go back in and thicken that up all the way to the tree trunk. Make sure that it's widest right at the tree trunk where it meets off the page there. Okay. And I'm using my fluid acrylics today because these will just automatically be a little bit easier to work with. They're a lot thinner than my normal heavy body acrylics. And I'm still even adding a little bit of water to them to make the liner brush work for me. And I'm just going to start back up at the top here and start adding in a bunch of branches. Some of these are coming, I think, off of the tree limbs back over here that you're not seeing the beginning of it. So it looks like some of them are kind of broken off, and I do kind of jaggedy, wiggly lines for some of them. So I'll speed it up here. As you can see, I'm just using this liner brush and adding all of these little side branches, crisscrossing. Keep your lines as thin as you can by pulling your brush to a nice point and keeping your paint nice and thin. The thinner paints work better with liner brushes. So if you have your paints too thick or your lines are getting too difficult to keep straight, you might need to thin out your paint a little bit. And you can also try using a brush called a spotter. It's just a liner with shorter hairs. It doesn't make as long lines as you can make with the liner brush, so you kind of have to use it for these shorter branches, but it works out just fine for us because we are done with all of our long branches, and now we're just kind of adding all of these little shorter very thin lines. And so this spotter works a little bit easier. It's a little bit easier to control the width of the line with it. You can get a lot of really fine lines with it, so it works well. If you notice, I'm using my finger on the reference image to guide my eye so I can kind of keep track of where I'm generally, what area I'm painting in off of the photograph. It's just a way that I've found helps me to keep track of all this visual confusion, because there's so many little lines and things. It's easy to kind of get lost in the mix of all of it. So that just helps me keep everything straight in my head and visually. So, and I'm just going to keep on going with this. I'm sped it up because it's very repetitive. We're just adding more and more branches, filling in all of these little details. This tree had a lot of branches. So while we're watching the time lapse here, I'll tell you a little bit about our sponsor today. Audible is a leading provider of audiobooks and digital audio information, news, and entertainment. I was really excited to partner with them on this. I actually love their service. If you've watched my show before, you know I'm totally into books, and I obviously don't have time to stop and enjoy reading as much as I would want to. So having the great library of audiobooks available through Audible allows me to enjoy one of my favorite hobbies and still get some work done. So that's been really nice. My book club will be reading The Secret Wife by Gil Paul this month, so I can get it on Audible and listen to it while I paint or drive or cook dinner, and it remembers my place in the book between all of my devices. I can even use it through my Amazon Echo and just say, Alexa, play The Secret Wife.
The Secret Wife, a captivating story of romance, passion, and mystery by Gil Paul, reading from Kindle.
Pretty cool. I may actually get my book club book read this month. I might be the only one, but hey. You can't make more time, but you can make the most of it. Audible helps me do that. If you'd like to try for yourself, they have a 30-day free trial right now. Just use the link www.audible.com/Angela, and it'll take you to their website. The link is in the video description below. You can try their service for 30 days free and download one book to keep. Even if you cancel, you get to keep it. It also gives you 30% off of any additional audiobook products. So if you love books like I do, but don't have the time to stop and read, you might want to check out Audible's library at audible.com/Angela. Okay, so as you see, we're making pretty good progress on our branches here. We're almost done getting down to the bottom. And I'm just now going back in and adding some little details. The ends of some of these branches had little kind of knobby things on them, so just kind of adding some of those and making sure I have all of these little teeny tiny branches that kind of fill in some of the empty spaces. This was a really fun project and I enjoyed it a lot, but it did have a lot of little branches, a lot of little details, so you just kind of have to take your time. You might want to do it in stages and come back to it, because it was not sped up. I think it took me about 40 minutes to just do the tree part itself, so it was quite a long process, but I think it was definitely worth it because the results are really pretty cool, I think. So to finish the painting, I mixed up a little bit of burnt sienna with my black and white and used it with my number 2 round to just kind of dry brush a little bit of highlights along just my main branches. Just add a little bit extra detail and give it a little bit more depth. I kind of went around the branches in a few places just to make sure that it made sense, you know, if there was a branch crossing over, that kind of thing. So anyhow, hope you enjoyed this project. I've really enjoyed bringing it to you today, and if you try it, I'd love to see it. You can share it with me on Facebook on my Thankful Art page. The link is down in the description. And be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already to my channel. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and after the show you can go check out my other videos that are available on my channel by clicking on my name or my photograph down under the video. Thanks so much for watching today, guys. I appreciate you. Thanks to all my patrons who've made this month so fun. We have been really blessed by your support. So thanks again for watching. Take care, and we will see you next time. Bye.